You are on Tips and Streams with your host, Coca.
What's good, everyone? Welcome back to Tips and Streams. I'm Kokan, and I hope you're doing well and feeling locked in wherever you're listening from. All right, let's get to the daily picks. I've got 4 NBA matchups on the card today, so buckle up. We're diving straight into the action. The first prediction for today's NBA games is for the game between the New Orleans Pelicans and Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte and New Orleans walk into this one from 2 totally different headspaces, and that matters as much as any matchup chart. When I handicap NBA games, I'm always hunting for the team that's playing with clarity. Right now, that screams Charlotte. They're not just winning, they're winning with belief, with roles that make sense, and with a home crowd that can smell another W. New Orleans has had flashes, but the bigger picture has been ugly. A long, rough stretch, like losing 16 of the last 21, doesn't happen by accident. The profile tells the story. They can score, but they bleed points. They're putting up 114.4 per game on solid shooting, yet giving up 120.9 while opponents hit them efficiently from the floor. That's the kind of math that turns close games into losses when the fourth quarter tightens. The reason they're still dangerous is the interior punch. They lead the league in points in the paint, and if they get downhill early, they can force rotations and make the game messy. Zion Williamson is the obvious tone setter there, and when he's playing bully ball, it changes the whistle and the rebounding lanes. Add a real scoring wing, like Trey Murphy III, and you've got enough firepower to steal stretches. But I can't ignore the red flag that keeps popping up. When they're not fully in rhythm or missing key pieces, their defense doesn't travel. And with DeJounte Murray out, that's one less steady hand to organize possessions and keep them from spiraling when Charlotte makes a run. Charlotte is rolling, and it doesn't feel fluky. They've won 6 straight, and the stretch includes confident performances against quality opponents. More importantly, the offense and defense are trending in the right direction at the same time. Over the season, they're scoring 116.2 a night and shooting the ball well, especially from deep. When a team is hitting threes at that kind of clip and also living at the line, they're hard to cool off at home. I love the way their 2 engines fit together. Brandon Miller gives them a clean go-to scorer who can rise over contests. And LaMelo Ball brings the pace, the shot creation, and the passing that keeps the floor spaced. And when you've also got a guy like Con Knuppel living at the free throw line with elite accuracy, that's how you close games without panicking. Now, Charlotte isn't perfect. They don't generate many steals, so they're not exactly turning defense into easy runouts. And they allow a lot of opponent free throws made, which is the last thing you want against a paint-first team. But here's where context matters. At home, with their confidence high, they've been sturdy when opponents try to rally. They've shown they can execute late instead of just surviving. Also, I'm not going to overthink the injury angle. Charlotte missing Mason Plumlee and KJ Simpson isn't ideal. But the main identity of this team right now is on the perimeter, and that's where they've been dictating terms. This matchup has been kind to the home side lately from a betting perspective, and I respect that. I also respect that New Orleans has covered well in this building at times. But the current form gap is real, and I'm not stepping in front of a team that's playing with this much momentum, especially at Spectrum Center. And the sneaky part for me is this. New Orleans can score, but if they have even one defensive quarter where they lose shooters or foul too much, Charlotte has the spacing to turn that into a double-digit swing fast. I kept the pick off the opening tip, but I'm landing where your forecast points. My prediction is Charlotte to win this game and cover the 5.5-point spread at home. I'm riding with the Hornets because they're the steadier team right now. They're playing connected basketball, and I trust their shot-making and late-game poise more than New Orleans' ability to get enough stops on the road. Today's second prediction is for the game between the Houston Rockets and the Indiana Pacers. I'm looking at this matchup like a classic points matter spot in Indiana, because the surface level gap between these teams is obvious. But the conditions are doing a lot of the talking tonight. Houston has been the better squad all season, but they're walking into Gamebridge without key pieces. And that changes the shape of the game more than people want to admit. Let's start with the Rockets' identity. Even with all their offensive talent, this group has made its money on physicality, controlling the glass, and turning defense into rhythm. They're putting up about 116 a night on solid efficiency. And the biggest thing that jumps off the page is how they rebound and how they limit second chances. That travel-friendly edge is real. But the moment Kevin Durant is unavailable, the Rockets don't just replace points. They typically shift priorities. The possessions get heavier, the pace slows, and the half-court becomes more about grinding out clean looks than winning a track meet. And if you're also missing Fred VanVleet, that's another stabilizer gone. Another decision maker you don't have late in the clock. Now, flip it to Indiana. The Pacers' record is ugly. No need to dress it up. But I'm not betting a season resume tonight. I'm betting a matchup window. Indiana has been playing its best ball at home lately, and they've shown they can stack solid efforts there, even when the overall season has been rough. They're still without Tyrese Halliburton, which obviously caps their ceiling as a full-throttle offense, and Obi Toppin being out takes away a transition finisher and an athletic release valve. But the rest of the rotation being mostly available matters. You can feel it in how they're able to compete possession to possession, instead of hanging on with tape and prayers. If I'm scouting the Pacers' path, it starts with Pascal Siakam carrying the scoring load and forcing Houston to send extra attention inside the arc. When Siakam is dictating matchups, Indiana can manufacture points without needing a perfect shooting night. Andrew Nembhard's role gets even bigger here, too, because he's the guy who has to keep the offense organized and repeatedly touch the paint. And if Indiana is smart, they'll treat every empty trip like a turnover, because Houston's biggest advantage is when they turn missed shots into waves. From a betting perspective, the trends line up with why I want the points. Houston has had real issues rewarding bettors as a road favorite, and they've been unreliable against teams with losing records when it comes to covering numbers. Meanwhile, Indiana has been more live than the standings suggest in the home underdog role. And this is the kind of spot where the building energy actually matters. You get the extra whistle battles, the extra loose ball effort, and the extra push when the game gets tight late. I also can't ignore the scoring environment. Houston games have leaned lower scoring lately, and this matchup often tilts that way too, especially when Indiana comes in off a home win. If the Rockets try to dictate tempo with defense, that's fine. A slower pace usually favors the underdog with points, because every possession becomes more valuable. So I'm keeping the pick in my pocket until the final horn. And here it is. My money is on the Pacers to cover the 7.5-point line at home. I'm not calling for Indiana to be the better team. I'm calling for them to be stubborn, physical, and close enough that Houston can't create separation without Durant and VanVleet. The third prediction for today is for the game between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Memphis Grizzlies. I'll be honest, this matchup is the definition of trust issues. Minnesota has been the kind of team that looks like a title threat one night, then plays with its food the next. And Memphis right now, it's been rough. The results, the rhythm, the consistency, all of it. But that's exactly why this rematch in the same building matters. We just saw these two in Memphis on January 31st, and Minnesota jumped on the Grizzlies early, controlled the tempo, and cruised to a 131-114 win. Minnesota's shot-making was clean, the ball moved, and they got comfortable looks from deep. When the Timberwolves are humming like that, they can bury you in a hurry, especially with their ability to win quarters late. That fourth-quarter punch is real, and it's a big reason they've been stacking wins lately. Still, I'm not handicapping this game like a replay. I'm handicapping it like a classic second night of the same movie spot, and those tend to flip on effort, urgency, and adjustments. Memphis has been sliding, and the injury list is doing them zero favors. Ja Morant is out, and they're missing multiple rotation pieces, with Jaren Jackson Jr. sitting in that questionable zone again. But here's the thing. Even with all that, this is the type of ugly home dog spot where I expect Memphis to look more connected. The first meeting was a defensive mess. Too many open looks, too many clean catch-and-shoot chances, and Minnesota basically walked into their sets like it was a shoot-around. If Memphis wants any chance to stay inside the number, the first fix is simple. Take away airspace, run shooters off the line, and make Minnesota finish through bodies instead of rhythm. And if Minnesota comes in even slightly shorthanded, with Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle both questionable, that changes the math. Minnesota can still function, sure, but their margin for error shrinks. Without full firepower, those big leads get harder to create, and those sleepy stretches become a problem when you're laying points. Some situational angles point toward the dog. Memphis has historically responded better as a home underdog against Minnesota after a loss. And Minnesota has had recent trouble covering in this building off a road win. Add in the emotional piece, getting embarrassed on your own floor and seeing the same opponent again, and I expect Memphis to show more fight, more physicality, and a lot more intention. So I'm keeping the pick off the opening tip and saving it for the buzzer. I'm taking the Grizzlies to cover the 9-point spread at home. I'm not saying Memphis suddenly becomes the better team overnight. I'm saying this number is begging you to trust Minnesota in a tricky rematch spot with injury uncertainty on both sides. I'd rather grab the points with the home squad, expect a tighter game script, and let desperation do some of the heavy lifting. Today's last prediction is for the game between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Los Angeles Clippers. This matchup has that classic West Coast test vibe. A hungry road team walking into a building where the home side has been stacking wins and defending like it's personal. I'm looking at this game like a full scouting report, not a highlight reel, because the line is all about context tonight. Philadelphia comes in riding momentum after handling the New Orleans Pelicans 124-114, and what jumped off the screen was how they controlled the rhythm. They didn't win by playing perfect basketball for 48 minutes. They won by owning a key stretch, building separation, and answering every punch late. Joel Embiid was the tone setter with a monster night. Kelly Oubre Jr. brought real two-way energy, and Tyrese Maxey kept the offense organized when it could have gotten messy. This team also has a real identity in one specific pocket of the game. They've been elite in the second quarter, and that matters because it's usually where rotations, bench minutes, and game flow get tested. Now flip it to the home side. The Clippers have been rolling lately, and they just went into Phoenix Suns territory and blew the doors off them 117-93, with Kawhi Leonard doing his usual quiet, dominant thing, and Ivica Zubac controlling the glass like a grown man. When this group is connected defensively, they can make good teams look average, and when they're getting stops, their half-court offense doesn't have to sprint. That's how they've been winning. But this is where the handicap conversation starts to lean toward the road dog. This is the second night of a back-to-back for the Clippers, and that's not a small detail. The trends you provided point to real slippage for them in that exact spot, especially in night games, and that's where legs show up. Closeouts get a half step late, box-outs turn into ball watching, and those little 50-50 plays start swinging. The other swing factor is availability. James Harden has been in and out of the conversation with a personal absence and a questionable tag, and that matters because he's not just points, he's the organizer. If he's limited or out again, the Clippers can still score, but the offense can get more turn-based and easier to load up on. On the other side, the notes say the Sixers weren't carrying anyone on the injury report in one section, and another update has Embiid listed as probable. Either way, that's a much cleaner picture than having to guess at your lead ball handler on no rest. And with Paul George suspended, Philadelphia's structure becomes even more important. They'll need their offense to be deliberate and their defensive effort to travel. So, here's what I'm watching. Can Philly win the rebounding battle enough to prevent extra possessions? Can Maxey pressure the point of attack without giving up straight-line drives? And can the Sixers survive the third quarter danger zone that's been a problem for them this season? If they do those three things, the game stays in the mud, and that's exactly where a plus 3.5 ticket starts to feel comfortable. Now I'll keep the pick for the buzzer like I always do. And at the buzzer, my prediction is the 76ers to cover the 3.5 point spread in Los Angeles. I'm riding with the road team to keep it tight, win enough grinded out stretches, and either steal it late or land inside that number.